Hello guys, welcome to Crunchy Tales. I am Gemma, your snack time movie companion. Hello friends. Today I am going to explain a very excellent South Korean mystery thriller film titled Murderer Report. At the beginning of the story, we hear some conversation happening over a call. This call was received by a reporter named Seon-ju. The person calling tells her that she should interview him. Then Seon-ju asks why she would interview him. Is he someone special? Then he says that he has killed 11 people, and he even describes the methods of how he finished them off. What he described there was extremely disturbing. For instance, how he ripped someone's throat out, fractured someone's skull, and severed the limbs of another victim. It was clear from his words what kind of killer he is and just how dangerous he is. The biggest thing was that there was no clear motive behind these murders as to why they were committed. Furthermore, the killer had no personal enmity with anyone. Anyway, after this, we see Seon-ju inside a car with her friend who was a policeman, and there was a romantic relationship between the two. Now, this guy's name is Sang-gu. Well, it was raining quite heavily, and we learned that Seon-ju also has a daughter named Jae-rin, who studies in middle school. But Seon-ju was quite worried about her because she hadn't taken an umbrella, so how would she return home in this weather? Then Sang-gu says that she is in middle school and can take care of herself. Then Seon-ju tells him that for some time now, Jae-rin has been behaving very strangely. She always remains sad. She doesn't talk to Seon-ju properly, and one day she even saw a razor inside her bag and couldn't understand what she was doing with it. Then Sang-gu says, how about if he talks to her? Anyway, here Seon-ju was thinking about meeting that killer. Then Sang-gu asks if she is really going to meet someone just like that. Isn't she afraid? Then Seon-ju says she is scared because if she makes a fake report, she could lose her job. But the thought was also in her mind. What if this is all true? Then Sang-gu says if that's the case, he will arrest him beforehand and then confirm all the facts. But Seon-ju had to take the killer's interview because the company had almost fired her, and she wouldn't last much longer in this company anyway. And one more thing, the killer had told her that within 3 days, he would kill someone at midnight. But if she interviews him, he will give her a chance to save that person. And Seon-ju really wanted to save that individual. Well, now she goes to interview that killer, which was to take place in a hotel. Sang-gu and she make a plan. After this, she goes to the hotel where some work was going on and the CCTV cameras of the entire hotel were being removed. Upon asking the receptionist, she explains that these cameras are being fixed. Anyway, after this, Seon-ju asks for the key card for room 2107, and she gives her the key card, after which Seon-ju goes into the elevator to go to that room. There, she makes a copy of that room card and leaves the copy of the room card in the elevator. She did this for Sang-gu. After which she goes into 2107 where we learn their plan. Actually, Sang-gu was going to stay in the room directly below 2107, and from there he would talk to Seon-ju, and if anything went wrong, he would enter using the duplicate key card. Seon-ju had also placed many hidden cameras so that Sang-gu could see everything. After this, Seon-ju starts waiting for the killer, and after a while, the killer rings the doorbell. He had arrived exactly on time. Seon-ju opens the door, and the killer was standing in front of her, who didn't look like a killer at all. Here, the killer asks her very politely if he can come inside. The killer asks Seon-ju if she liked the room. Actually, this room was booked by the killer, and he mentions that this room was designed by a modern artist named Roth McWilder. Now this killer closes all the windows there, after which he sits in front of the setup video camera. Then Seon-ju starts looking at him carefully, thinking he doesn't look like a killer at all. He tells her not to stare at him like that as he feels shy. Here, the killer's behavior was quite strange. Then Seon-ju starts questioning him. She says that regarding all the murders he has claimed, it's impossible that he left no evidence or wasn't caught on CCTV. Here, Seon-ju's belief was becoming blurred. She felt that this was some prank and this man was really wasting her time. But then the killer was ready to show evidence. He shows her some videos on his phone in which the killer had finished off victims with his own hands, and seeing this, Seon-ju's condition worsens. At the same time, she realizes that the killer is indeed dangerous. Now, Seon-ju proceeds with her interview. She turns on the recording and first asks him about his identity. The killer says it's not important who he is. Just his face being visible on camera is enough. After this, Seon-ju moves to the next question. She asks why he killed 11 people for what purpose. Then he explains here that he is a doctor, and those he killed were finished off for treatment purposes. Seon-ju cannot understand anything. Then he explains that he didn't commit these murders to purify society, but they were done for treatment purposes, and by treatment he meant medical-style treatment. Here, the killer reveals that he is a professional psychiatrist and all the people he has finished off were cancerous tumors. Then Seonju asks if that means the people he killed were psychologically harming his patients. To which he says yes, she understood. Meaning the reason for the killer to finish these people was that they were bothering his patients. She asks him why he wants to give an interview, to which he says he wanted a chance to show himself. Well, here the killer also asks her if this is definitely a secret, meaning does anyone else besides them know about this interview? To which she says yes, meaning she lied. However, Sang-gu was sitting in the room below, but the killer believes her for now that she is telling the truth. Now the question comes, why did he choose Seonju specifically for the interview? He gives the answer to that as well. He already knew about Seonju. He knows Seonju is very sharp and brave, so he chose her so she could give an exclusive story today. But Seonju had come here to find out about the victims so she could save them. But the killer says he won't tell her. Hearing this, Seonju stands up and leaves the memory card of whatever was recorded so far right there because her motive for coming there was to save that person. But now that the killer wasn't going to tell her, what would be the point? Well, he tells her that he can still kill that victim, and their life will be safe only as long as this interview lasts. Well, now Seonju asks the most important question. She asks why he kills his victims in such bizarre ways, and then he tells her a story about the reason behind it. He tells the story of a lady who got married at the age of 29 and became pregnant sometime later. But meanwhile, one day in a parking lot, a thug came to her and did something wrong to her, and this thing settled inside that lady like a trauma. When that lady gave birth, a thought settled in her mind that her child's eyes were exactly like that thug's, and even if she wanted to, the lady couldn't accept her son. Then one day, out of grief, she jumped out of the window with her child, taking both their lives. That trauma was able to overcome her. And the most dangerous twist comes now. In reality, this was the killer's own wife's story. Despite being a doctor, he couldn't remove his wife's delusion. And a matter of greater shame was that the person who committed that crime only received a 4-year sentence, and previously that man was laughing as if mocking him and saying he would be out again. Meaning that man was mocking the doctor, this killer. Then he did a lot of research to finish that man, reading all research related to human torture, how he would make him suffer and kill him. But the day that man was to be released, he died inside the prison due to an electric shock. Meaning that person didn't suffer at all, even though he deserved to suffer a lot. At that time, the killer found no reason to live. Then he opened a mental health clinic, and a man came to him whose wife had been hit by a car, and in this accident, his wife lost her life and his 8-year-old son went into a coma. Now, some years later, his patient saw that other man who had hit them and committed a wrong act. That man wanted revenge on the one who hit them. He wanted him finished. And he tells all these things to the killer. At this time, this killer wasn't a killer, but this was going to be his first kill. Then, the killer knocks that hit-and-run driver unconscious, after which he brings him to a place, puts him on a large cross, and kills him. Basically, it was about providing justice, and by making a video of this, he shows it to that man, and that man was truly happy seeing it. Seonju asks if that man agreed with his treatments, to which he says that at first he panicked, but later he himself understood that all this was necessary, and ultimately he wanted the same thing. The killer says he makes the connection between him and his patient very understanding. He cannot erase the harmed memories, but yes, he can definitely reduce their pain. Now the conversation moves forward and the killer questions Seonju whether she has really come to save that person's life or if she has come here for an exclusive report. To this, Seonju says she has specifically come to save that person. Hearing this, the killer tells her to say this while looking into his eyes. And here, nervously, Seonju looks into the killer's eyes and tells him again. Then the killer says that the nervousness is clearly visible on her face. Her pulse has increased by 30%. Overall, her body language says she is lying. But Seonju says that this is the truth. Then the killer says it's okay, it happens. Anyway, journalism is very competitive. He was talking to her when someone rang the bell. The killer says it must be room service. He had ordered food. Well, he talks to her and also attends to the room service. The killer says that sometimes these people do anything without knowing the consequences. Well, now he has the room service boy place the food, and after that, the killer starts giving him a tip. He was going to give him a double tip, but then he stops and tells him that he is very lazy about doing his work. But whenever it's about room service, he comes running, and all this for a small tip. Here, He also calls that room boy by his name, and hearing this, the room service boy was shocked at how he knew his name. And just suddenly, at that moment, the killer injects a toxin into the room service boy's neck, which causes blood to start coming out of his mouth, and he falls right there. Seeing this, Seonju was very scared, and Sang-gu was also scared. Seonju asks the killer why he did that. Then he explains that this boy used to blackmail a girl with her MMS, and he had recorded this MMS in which he had assaulted that girl. He kept taking money from her continuously and had been doing this vile act for the last 3 years, and because of this, the girl's engagement even broke off. Then Seonju asks, didn't he say he would kill someone tonight? Then he says, yes, he will kill someone tonight as well. Saying this much, he calmly starts eating food. Here, Seonju had seen a live murder with her own eyes, and seeing this, her condition was quite bad. At the same time, that room service boy was still moving, but the killer says she should worry about the one who is currently alive, not the one who is about to die. Basically, the killer had given him a painful death. Well, she continues the interview where Seonju asks him what he does after killing people. To which the killer explains that he has set up different centers and he goes to different places to attend to different people and different patients, understanding their problems and solving them, which includes these murders. Meaning, those whose problems can be solved normally, he solves normally, but for those whose problems are big, he becomes a killer and murders people. Next, Seonju asks if his patients like all this. Don't they feel uncomfortable or guilty seeing all this? Then he says, it happens in the beginning. People don't understand and feel uncomfortable because it's a bit disturbing and new for them. But he fixes this too with his hypnotherapy. He gives people hypnotherapy so that they normalize this and can enjoy seeing their culprit get punished. Now he tells her how he hypnotizes people. He shows her a coin, and this is how he hypnotizes people. Well, meanwhile, Sang-gu comes to catch the killer. He tries to open the door with the fake keycard, but the door doesn't open. Then he has to go back down and sit in his room again. Well, here the killer tells her about a child with whom something very bad happened, and the one who did the bad thing is also a child. Actually, all this happened due to jealousy. According to the killer, he will punish the bully too, and the punishment will be death. Now this killer explains that he can hypnotize that bully boy just through a call, and upon making one call, he will jump from the roof and finish himself. But before that, he tells what he had done. Actually, he had cut the victim's hands with a razor because the victim was a very good musician. Hearing about the razor, Seonju remembers her daughter because she had seen a razor inside her daughter's bag too. So was her daughter the culprit? She asks him this question, but he says no. Both the victim and the culprit are boys. Hearing this, she heaves a sigh of relief. Now here, the killer questions her about her daughter. He spins that coin and hypnotizes Seonju. After being hypnotized, Seonju starts telling him everything. She says that, for the last 6 months, her daughter hasn't talked to her properly, as if she is hiding something from her, and she feels that she wants to live with her father, who lives separately from Seonju because they are divorced. She also says that her daughter is becoming exactly like her father and she doesn't care about anyone. She has become selfish. Then the killer asks if she hates her daughter, but hearing this question, Seonju went silent. Then the killer asks her again, but then she sees the childhood image of her daughter. Meanwhile, Sang-gu, who is in contact, tells her that this man is controlling her and if she says anything, they will be exposed. Basically, they were in contact. Now, Sang-gu tells her to use the stun gun that he had given her, and then she comes to her senses. After which, she picks up the stun gun, and the killer says let's continue, but she refuses. Seonju says she won't do this interview anymore. She stands up and goes to the killer and tells him to quickly tell her about the person he is going to finish off. Then the killer asks her why she is suddenly in such a hurry to save him. Then she says she has found out what a dangerous person he is, and therefore he should tell quickly. Anyway, on the other side, Sang-gu tells Seonju to stun the killer, but she really wanted to know about that victim and also wanted to save them. The killer tells Seonju to sit down and he will tell her everything, after which Seonju sits down. Well, now he reveals that he knows who is sitting in the room below. Here we get to know that the killer already knew about all these plans, that Sang-gu is downstairs and he is a policeman. Hearing this, Seonju was shocked and Sang-gu was also shocked. The killer calls the phone in Sang-gu's room and cuts the call as soon as Sang-gu picks up the phone. But his making the call triggers a device, a mechanism from which a gas comes out, causing Sang-gu to fall asleep. After this, the killer comes towards Seonju, and then Seonju tries to stun him. But the killer is a psychiatrist. He catches her hand and instead stuns her. After which, when Seonju opens her eyes, she finds herself tied up. and this time the killer had changed the display color to red. Then, on the other side, we see Sang-gu, and he was also kept tied up. Then Seonju apologizes to him for lying. Then the killer says that he too had told her a lie, and that lie is that this interview is not about him. It is about Seonju. And the killer just had to meet her in person to confirm some things. Here he relaxes her and says he won't hurt her. Here he releases her, which makes Seonju a bit relaxed. Now, through conversation, he asks her about her life, what problems are going on in her life, and what mistakes she has made. Now she remembers a lot. Meanwhile, the killer tells Sang-gu not to try to free himself or he will kill Seonju. Here he also shows Seonju the video of Sang-gu, after which he asks her what had actually happened. Then she tells about the Alshin group, that a year ago a guy named Min-seok contacted Seonju. And Min-seok was actually the head of the finance team. He had requested Seonju to meet. He explained that he had internal information to expose. He claimed that 10 years ago, during the development of a new drug, toxic waste was illegally discharged into a river, and this was happening through a criminal organization. They have been doing these things often, and it spreads many diseases and can even endanger people's lives. But to cover this up, those criminals had bribed politicians. Anyway, if this matter had come out in public, they would all be exposed. But Min-seok was in guilt, and he had known this for a long time, but out of fear he hadn't told anyone. And that's why he was telling all these things to Seonju. He had gathered some evidence and made a ledger which contained all the proof, and Seonju had hidden it inside her house. But one day it was stolen, and that same night Min-seok lost his life in a hit-and-run case. Then a month ago, Seonju's company received an anonymous message in which Seonju was accused of having stolen that evidence in collusion with the Alshin group, and this was the reason Seonju's job was in danger, which she had mentioned at the start. But she hadn't done anything in this. She didn't have that ledger or evidence stolen. The killer asks if she is sure she did nothing, to which she says yes, she is 100% sure. Then the killer asks her to swear on her daughter, and she swears on her daughter, and the killer believes her. But he already knew that she was innocent. Now the killer tells her the actual reason why he called her here. He says he called her so he could treat her. Here, Seonju doesn't understand anything. When did she become a patient while taking an interview, and what exactly was going on? Now he asks her about Sang-gu. Then she tells that Sang-gu is her old friend and they also have a romantic relationship. But what was Sang-gu's role in this whole plan? Now the killer was going to tell this as well. Well, first he shows Seonju live footage of Sang-gu, in which he was continuously trying to run away, trying to free himself, even though the killer had already told him that if he tried to run, he would kill Seonju. Meaning he didn't care about Seonju at all. And friends, now the real cards of this movie are revealed. The killer tells Seonju that Sang-gu isn't worried about her because the one who stole the ledger was none other than Sang-gu himself. Yes, because only he knew where she hid those things, and only he knew she was involved with Min-seok, and he knew she came home late. But Seonju had faith in Sang-gu that he couldn't do such a thing. Then the killer explains that Sang-gu is a very corrupt officer, and furthermore, he is a highly capable homicide cop. So the criminals who were trapped in all these cases had prepared a trap for Sang-gu so that he would work for them. They sent a girl to Sang-gu. That girl talked to Sang-gu, and after talking for some days, they spent a night together. But those criminals took naked photos of Sang-gu and that girl so they could blackmail him. And in return for this, they wanted that ledger from him, with Sang-gu's help. There was also pressure coming on him from the police department because everyone was involved in this. Money had reached everyone. But Sang-gu wanted to become the chief of detectives in return for this. He had placed this condition before the commissioner, and the commissioner said yes, he would be promoted. And then what? He secretly entered Seonju's house and stole that ledger. But while doing this, her daughter Jae-rin had seen him, and after that he did a very heinous act with her. He assaulted her. Hearing this, Seonju feels very bad. She was completely broken that how could he do such a thing, and she didn't even know about this, and she still couldn't believe it. Well, now he also mentions that he chose this hotel because he has good connections here, and the girl whom the room service boy used to blackmail also works in this hotel. Anyway, here Seonju didn't know that something so wrong had happened with Jae-rin. The killer gives her a phone so she can ask Jae-rin about it herself, and she does so. She musters the courage to call Jae-rin, and Jae-rin asks if she is with the doctor uncle, meaning the killer already knew her. He had met her before, and that razor blade here was proof of that. Here, Jae-rin tells everything, that she wanted to tell her, but couldn't. Hearing all this, Seonju feels immense pain. She starts crying, she was broken. But Seonju wanted to confront Sang-gu alone once. Then the killer sends her to Sang-gu alone. she goes to Sang-gu where he was free. She asks him if all this is true, but he starts denying it and says she is still under hypnotism and should come to her senses. But here Seonju was fully conscious. She was feeling very angry. But the killer had sent a gun with Seonju. Now here she points the gun at Sang-gu. Then Sang-gu starts fighting her and somehow snatches the gun from Seonju. Then we see the real face of Sang-gu. He started kicking and beating Seonju, meaning he was with her only for a physical relationship. He wasn't her friend. Then the killer comes there and stops him. But Sang-gu had the gun and tells him to step back, otherwise he would shoot him. But the killer isn't afraid of him. Then Sang-gu shoots at him, but shockingly, there was no bullet in this gun, and he had deliberately given Seonju an empty gun. Meanwhile, Seonju stabs an injection into Sang-gu's leg, causing him to instantly become unconscious. Then the killer comes to Seonju and says she can go from here. He will handle the rest of the work. Hearing this, Seonju starts to leave from there, and she was feeling a lot of guilt because she never listened to her daughter and didn't even ask what had happened. And ultimately, she was calling her selfish, but the reality was something else entirely. Well, now the scene changes where the killer had laid Sang-gu down in a place and he couldn't even move from there. The killer tells him that he will have to bear pain as much as Jae-rin bore, and he will have to pay double for it. Saying this much, the killer cuts off his genitals and Sang-gu is left suffering like that. Now the scene shifts to Jae-rin, who was with the killer. Here we get to know the name of that killer, which was Yeon-hoo. Now Yeon-hoo gives therapy to Jae-rin so that her trauma ends, and it happens exactly like that. Jae-rin asks him if that man will come in her nightmares again, to which he says no, now he will never come, and Jae-rin was talking about Sang-gu. Now Yeon-hoo tells Jae-rin to call her mother, and she does so. Seonju comes to him, and then he asks Seonju if he can treat her too, but she refuses because for whatever she had done, not listening to her daughter, she must suffer, and if these memories are erased, she won't suffer. She wanted to suffer for the rest of her life as penance. Well, now Seonju asks Yeon-hoo if he is okay, because his hands stained with blood couldn't be washed so easily. And hearing her words, the doctor falls into thought. After this, Seonju leaves from there with her daughter. The doctor looks at his hands and realizes that yes, he is indeed a killer. And meanwhile, he receives a call from a welfare center about a girl who had been child abused and he had to treat her. Now, Yeon-hoo fixes an appointment here, which means that he will continue doing this work. And boom, with this, the film ends right here. So friends, this was the story of Murderer Report. I hope you liked the video and the movie. If you liked it, then like the video, and if you're new to the channel, then subscribe.